Have you ever moved somewhere and just know something's not right? That kind of gut feeling you try to ignore because, well, you've already unpacked the boxes and paid the deposit? That was me in the fall of 2019. I had just turned 27 and decided to start fresh after a messy breakup and a job that nearly fried my brain. I found this small fixer-upper in a quiet little place called Elmbrook, a tiny town way out in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. The house was on Maple Lane, a street so calm, you could hear squirrels arguing across the road. Seemed like a good spot to breathe for a while. It was cheap, old, and a little creaky, but it was mine. I didn't know a single soul there. That was kind of the point. I wasn't looking to make friends or go to block parties. I wanted space, peace. A little silence after a loud few years. But what I got instead was something else entirely. The house sat toward the edge of town kind of by itself with only a few homes nearby. The first few days were just me and cardboard boxes. I played some music, unpacked slowly, and took walks down the street just to stretch my legs. Weird thing, though. I never saw anyone. Not a single person. No kids on bikes. No folks out walking dogs. No one watering plants or waving from a porch. It was like someone had hit pause on the whole neighborhood. All the houses looked lived in. Cars in the driveways, trash bins out, porch lights on at night. But the people? Nowhere. Started to get to me a little, like the place was hiding something. Then came the knock. It was a Thursday afternoon, still daylight. I was knee-deep in a box labeled kitchen junk when I heard it. 3 steady knocks on the front door. I froze. I hadn't seen a person in days, so hearing someone knock felt almost unnatural, like a sound from a dream. When I opened the door, there he was. A tall, lanky guy, maybe in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a smile that was way too wide to feel normal. He had this kind of sunken look, like someone who didn't sleep much, wore a thick tan jacket and jeans that had seen better days. "Hey there," he said, cheerful. "I'm Roy, I live down at the end of the lane." I nodded, unsure what to say. He looked harmless, but something about him instantly made me tense up. Roy asked me all the usual neighbor stuff. Where I moved from, what I did, if I moved alone. I answered politely but kept it short. Then he told me he lived with his sister, Janine, and they like to host little dinners now and then for new folks. "Helps build the spirit around here," he said with a wink. "We were thinking of having a few neighbors over tomorrow night. You should come, meet the crew, get to know Elmbrook a little." I wasn't exactly dying to hang out with strangers, but I also didn't want to seem rude. And honestly, I was starting to feel pretty isolated. Maybe meeting a few people would help me shake that weird, haunted feeling the neighborhood had, so I said yes. Big mistake. Friday night rolled around, and I got dressed in something decent. Nothing fancy, just clean jeans and a hoodie. Roy's house was about a 10-minute walk, sitting at the very end of Maple Lane. It looked kind of old and sagging, like it had been patched up too many times. No cars were parked out front. No lights in the windows. No signs of a party. Still, the door was slightly open. I hesitated. Then knocked, no answer. Just a voice calling from somewhere inside. "Come on in." Doors open. It was Roy. I stepped inside. The house was weird. That's the only way I can say it. It smelled like moldy carpet and burnt plastic. The walls were yellowed and all the lights were dim. Like someone had intentionally swapped out every bulb for something one step above pitch black. I followed Roy's voice toward the kitchen, but when I got there, nothing. Just a cold, empty room. No food, no chairs, no plates, no noise, no people. I called out, "Roy." No answer. "Janine?" Silence. The longer I stood there, the more I started to feel it, this pressure in the air. Like the walls were holding their breath. Then I heard it. Click. The sound of the front door closing. Then, lock, 3 deadbolts. My stomach dropped. I didn't wait. I turned and bolted back toward the front door. As I reached it, I heard footsteps behind me, slow at first, then fast, heavy, coming closer, and Roy's voice. Not cheerful anymore. Not even close. Leaving so soon? I struggled with the locks, my hands shaking, eyes wide, breath caught in my throat. As I got the last one undone, I felt his hand brush the back of my hoodie. I shoved the door open and ran. Didn't stop. Not once, just sprinted down the road back to my house, slammed my door shut, locked it, and ducked down by the window. My heart was still thudding when I saw him. Roy. He was standing across the street, watching, smiling. I called the police. They came out about 20 minutes later, asked me a bunch of questions, and went over to talk to Roy. He didn't answer the door. What they found out later made my skin crawl. There was no Janine. Roy lived alone. Had for over 15 years. No neighbors had been invited to any dinner. In fact, the cops told me most folks in town avoided Roy's place. Said he was strange. Said he'd been involved in some uncomfortable incidents over the years, but nothing they could charge him with. And since he technically didn't do anything to me, they couldn't arrest him. He was just weird, they said. Watch your back, they said. Back in 2016, I was living in a small town called Fairbridge, one of those places where everybody waves at each other, and most houses look like they were built at the same time by the same guy. I'd grown up there, on the same street, with the same people, and with the same corner store. When my mom and dad retired and moved to Florida, they handed the house down to me. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. I was 27, single, working nights at the local diner, and most of my days were spent sleeping, watching movies, or messing around on my laptop. Life was simple. Nothing weird ever really happened on our street, at least not until the guy across the street showed up. It was mid-October, the air was getting colder, and the trees had started turning that deep orange that makes everything look like a postcard. I noticed the moving truck one morning when I went out to grab a coffee from the corner store. A guy, maybe early 30s, was hauling boxes out of a beat-up U-Haul. He had this long, faded green coat and a baseball cap pulled down low. Nothing unusual. Just looked like a normal dude settling into his new place. I didn't go over or anything. I'm not that neighbor. I figured I'd bump into him at the mailbox or something eventually. A week went by. No sign of him during the day. No cars coming or going. Curtains always closed. The house was always dark at night. Like he wasn't even living there. Then one night, after a late shift at the diner, I pulled into my driveway and saw him. He was standing perfectly still right in front of my house on the sidewalk, staring straight at my front door. He wasn't moving, not even a little. Not checking his phone, not walking by, just standing there. I blinked, and when I looked back again, he was gone. I even walked around a little to see if he'd just turned the corner or something. But nope, nothing. It was like he vanished into thin air. Weird, right? But I told myself I was just tired. Maybe I'd imagined it. Working nights mess with your head after a while. The next morning, I went out to grab the mail. As I turned back toward the house, I glanced across the street. His place was dark again, but something moved in the upstairs window. Just a flash, like someone had quickly ducked away. The blinds swayed like they'd been touched. Like someone had been standing there watching me. A chill ran through me. You know that feeling when someone's staring at you, even if you can't see them? That's exactly what it felt like. Like I was being studied. I went inside and locked the door behind me. I didn't know why, but my stomach was in knots the rest of the day. I couldn't focus on anything, not TV, not my phone, nothing. I kept getting up to peek through the window, expecting to see him again. But every time I looked, there was nothing there. That night, I made sure every window and door was locked. I even put a chair in front of the front door. Not that it would have stopped anybody, but it made me feel better. I went to bed around midnight, but sleep didn't come easy. I kept waking up hearing faint creaks and tapping sounds. It's an old house, sure, but that night the sounds felt off, like someone was trying to move quietly, on purpose. Then at around 3:01 a.m., I opened my eyes and felt cold all over. I sat up, heart racing. The room was pitch dark, but something felt wrong. I could feel it deep in my gut, like when you know you forgot to lock the back door, but worse. I turned on my lamp and looked around. Nothing out of place. I got up and walked to the bedroom door, standing there for a second with my hand on the knob. My heart was pounding. I was about to unlock it, but something told me not to. It was like my body was warning me, don't do it. So I didn't. I crouched down and pressed my ear against the door. At first, nothing. Just silence. Then I heard it creak, a slow, dragging step on the hallway floorboards. I froze. My heart thudded so hard I was afraid whoever was out there could hear it. I lowered myself even further and peeked under the door. At first there was nothing. Just shadows. Then something moved. Boots. Black boots, just inches from the bottom of the door. I gasped and jerked back too fast. The creaking stopped instantly. He heard me. Suddenly, fast, heavy footsteps stomped up to the door. I backed away, hands shaking, breath caught in my throat. I sat down against the far wall, staring at the door, and then, no light, no gap. The bottom of the door went completely dark. Something or someone was laying flat, pressing up against it, blocking the light. I leaned forward just a little. I didn't want to see anything, but I had to look, and one bloodshot, wide-open eye was staring back at me from the gap beneath the door. I let out a choked sound, scrambled to my feet and grabbed my phone. I was shaking so badly I kept messing up the passcode. It took everything in me just to dial 911. While I talked to the dispatcher, I could hear movement again. Soft thumps, the sound of something being dragged, doors creaking open and shut. And then, nothing. Dead quiet. The dispatcher told me to stay where I was. I didn't move an inch. I just sat there in the corner, phone in my hand, every light in the room turned on. It felt like forever before the police showed up. When they knocked, I didn't believe it was them at first. I was too scared to even answer. But they kept calling out my name until I finally opened the door. They searched the house top to bottom. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. But they said the back door was unlocked. I swore I locked it. I always lock it. I told them about the guy across the street. They went over and knocked. It was almost 4 a.m. by then, but he answered right away. Fully dressed, eyes wide, like he hadn't been sleeping at all. The police talked to him for a while. I couldn't hear much, but later they told me he slipped up. Said something about the layout of my hallway. Something about my bedroom being the second door on the right. He shouldn't have known that. They took him in. Turns out his name wasn't even real. Brian or Mike or whatever he said his name was, it was fake. He had a record in another state. A stalking charge from 5 years ago. And worse, they searched his computer. He'd been Googling my name weeks before he ever moved in. He had photos of my house, my backyard, even me walking my dog last summer. Some of them were taken from inside my yard. The scariest part? He had just moved to Fairbridge 2 weeks earlier. Rented the house across from mine on purpose. He moved in to watch me. The police said they couldn't figure out exactly why he chose me. Maybe he saw something online. Maybe it was random. But they were sure he wasn't just planning to watch. They found a crowbar in his coat. A roll of duct tape in his kitchen. Rope under his bed. He had a plan. He's in prison now. For how long, I don't know. They told me I probably stopped something terrible from happening just by not opening that door. I still live in Fairbridge, but I moved to a different street. A smaller house with motion lights, security cameras, and a dog that barks at everything. But even now, I still check the windows a little too often. I still wake up some nights and stare at the door, waiting for a shadow. Waiting for an eye, and I still wonder, what would have happened if I'd opened that door? Okay, so this happened back in 2016, when I was 27. I'd just moved to a small town called Pine Hollow for a new job at a local design firm, a quiet place. One of those towns where everyone knows everyone, but nobody really talks about anything important. You know the type. Anyway, I didn't have much stuff, so the move was easy. I ended up renting an apartment in this weird old building on Willow Street. Only 6 units in the whole place, 2 on each floor stacked on top of each other. I got the top floor, apartment 3B. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, clean, and had a decent view of the woods behind the building. I liked it. When I first showed up to check the place out, the landlord wasn't there. Instead, this woman from across the hall came out and offered to show me around. Her name was Janet. She was probably in her late 40s, early 50s maybe, and had this tired energy about her. Her hair was stringy and long, kind of graying at the ends, and her clothes looked like she'd been wearing the same outfit for days. She wasn't mean, just blank. No expression, barely any tone in her voice, like she was only half present. Still, she had the keys and showed me the apartment, so I didn't question it too much. When I asked if she worked for the landlord or something, she just said, "I look after the place." That was it. Not sure what that meant, but I signed the lease anyway. Looking back, I should have taken that as a red flag. The first night I moved in, everything felt normal. I unpacked a few boxes, made a frozen pizza, and passed out early. The next day was my first shift at work, and it went well. I didn't get home until around 8 p.m. As I walked up the stairs, I saw her, Janet, just standing in front of my door. She wasn't knocking or anything. Just standing there, staring at the door like she forgot why she was there. "Hey," I said, kind of awkward. "Do you need something?" She turned to look at me slowly and asked, "Is this the time you usually get home?" I blinked. I guess. I'm still figuring out my schedule." She didn't say anything after that, just nodded once, turned around, went back into her apartment and slammed the door shut. I stood there for a minute trying to process what just happened. Then I laughed it off. Maybe she was just socially awkward. No big deal, right? Wrong. The next morning I was jolted awake at exactly 6:03 a.m. Someone was banging on my door like their life depended on it. Still half asleep, I stumbled over and cracked it open. Yep, it was her. Same blank face. Same ratty clothes. But now she had this strange forced smile stretched across her face, like she'd watched a YouTube video on how to smile but hadn't practiced enough. "Come to my place after work," she said. That was it. No good morning, no reason, no emotion, just a creepy invitation. I rubbed my eyes. I'm probably gonna be busy tonight, sorry." Her smile didn't fade. She just turned around, walked back to her door, and boom, slammed it shut again. That was twice now. Twice in 2 days. That night I got home a little earlier, around 7. I checked the hallway. Empty. No Janet. I breathed a sigh of relief, unlocked my door and slid inside. But even with her gone, the air felt heavy. You know that feeling when you just know someone's been in your room? That's what it felt like. I checked every closet, every cabinet under the bed, nothing. Still, I locked the door tight and propped a chair against it, just in case. The next morning, same thing. 6:03 a.m., loud knocks, and guess who? She asked the exact same question, same flat tone. "Come to my place after work." I gave the same excuse. She did the same thing, turned around, slammed the door. I started wondering if this was some kind of weird ritual for her. Like Groundhog Day, but creepier. By day 4, I was beyond unsettled. I told a coworker named Mia about it, and she gave me this weird look. "Wait, you're in 3B?" she asked. "Yeah, why?" She hesitated. "You know a guy used to live there, right?" "Before you?" "Sure," I said. "It's an apartment. People move in and out." "He didn't move out," she said quietly. "He disappeared last year. Left everything behind. Cops couldn't figure it out." I laughed it off like it was some rumor, but it hit me in the stomach like a brick. That night I stayed late at work. On purpose. I didn't get home until after 9. The whole building was dark and quiet. No lights on in Janet's place. I tiptoed up the stairs, not wanting to draw attention. When I got to my door, I noticed something immediately. The doorknob was cold. Like unnaturally cold. I touched it and it felt like ice, even though the hallway was warm. My stomach dropped. I turned the knob slowly. It was unlocked. I know I locked it. I always lock it. I pushed the door open and froze. The lights were off, but I could hear something. A faint scratching noise like nails on wood. I reached for the switch, but it didn't work. Bulb must have been unscrewed. My heart pounded. That's when I saw it. The bedroom door was wide open and Janet was standing inside, right by my bed, holding a kitchen knife. Her eyes were wide now, not blank. Not calm. Wild. Bloodshot. Her mouth was twitching like she was about to laugh or cry, but didn't know which. "What are you doing?" I managed to whisper. She didn't answer. She just took a slow step forward. I bolted. I turned, grabbed the doorknob, but it wouldn't move. She jammed it somehow. I pulled harder. Still stuck. Behind me, I heard her bare feet slapping softly against the floor. Closer. I grabbed a lamp and turned around. Ready to swing. She lunged. I slammed the lamp into her arm, knocking the knife loose. It clattered to the floor. We both dove for it, but I got there first. I didn't even think, just held it up between us and backed away. She stared at me, breathing hard, eyes wide. Then she just sat down, didn't cry, didn't scream. Just sat there cross-legged on the floor like none of this had happened. I called the police. They came and took her away. She didn't resist, barely even spoke. Turns out she'd been off her meds for months. She had a long history of mental illness, paranoia, hallucinations, delusions. Her family thought she was taking care of herself. She wasn't. And the guy who lived in my apartment before? Yeah, he really did disappear. No sign of him. Not a trace. They never proved anything, but after what happened to me, police reopened the case. Still no answers. Only more questions. I moved out 2 days later. Haven't been back since. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd come home just a little earlier that night. Or if I hadn't woken up in time. Or if I hadn't fought back. But most nights I just try not to think about it at all. Especially at 6:03 a.m.